Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter. When it comes to celebrating an anniversary, there's a range as to what you can do to mark the occasion. For the BBC, who've been celebrating their 100th birthday this year, people expected an extravaganza. We've had special programmes, idents, tributes and more, but did you know we've also had a new book? A puzzle book, no less. This is the BBC Puzzle Book, written by Ian Smith and Dr. Gareth Moore. Now, I had no idea that this was coming out, only coming across it on a random table in my local Waterstones. The blurb on the back challenges readers to test your knowledge of the BBC and all your favourite programmes with this official puzzle book. Now, I've dabbled with books of this nature before, I don't mind a good puzzle, but I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to complete one thoroughly. However, flicking through the first few pages showed me that this isn't just a puzzle book, it's a neat little concise factual treasure trove about the BBC's first 100 years. But before we open this up, just look at this cover. Any wonder how this managed to catch my eye? The internationally recognised image of Carol Hersey with her clown Bubbles playing a game of noughts and crosses is synonymous not just with the BBC, but arguably BBC television and television in general. The border of the book resembles the familiar colour tones of Test Card F, first used on the Beeb in 1967 when BBC Two kicked over to colour. If you want to learn more about the history of the test card, you can check out my documentary that I made on the subject. Whilst the cover is gorgeous, had the BBC 100 banner and slogan not been situated at the top, you'd hardly know that this was a celebratory release at all. It's a hardback book, not necessarily in the traditional hardback style that novels come in, but the book feels nice to hold and of a good print quality. Opening up the book, the contents offer a glimpse as to what this book has to offer, including not just information on puzzles regarding BBC television, but even BBC Radio as well, which essentially represented the corporation exclusively for its first 20 or so years. The introductory pages detail the evolution of broadcasting, how the BBC was born, and how it's tried to lead the way in the progression of the medium ever since. The next segment is a timeline, with the top half displaying various milestones in the world of radio, whilst the bottom half represents the biggest moments in television, that the BBC had a hand in, of course. The most up-to-date points come from 2020. For radio, it's regarding the Make a Difference campaign, which launched after the start of the first lockdown, and for TV, I May Destroy You gets a glowing mention. BBC Radio comes next, with a very concise history of its beginnings in 1922 up to the modern day, with mentions of local BBC Radio divisions. The right-hand side of this spread first showcases some of the puzzles that this book promises, such as figuring out which 3 counties are covered by BBC Three Counties Radio, or which local presenter matches with which station. It may seem simple, but rest assured they aren't all like this. Nevertheless, the next page takes us to the ever-present BBC television. Again, the left-hand side offers a concise brief history of the BBC's beginnings and developments with the medium, including the introductions of the 4 numbered BBC channels. It even takes into account some of the most recent developments, such as BBC Three returning to linear television in early 2022. More puzzles are present, and again, showcase that they're trying to be as varied as possible. I'm sure many of you will enjoy this one, Ident Identity. Wonder which channels these idents belong to, eh? Now we get into the different genre categories of this book, these being entertainment, drama, comedy, soap operas, sport, music, factual, children's television, lifestyle, news, weather and current affairs, all in one no less, and technology. And the final section of the book is detailing the answers to all of the puzzles. Now, I won't go through page by page because that would be spoiling the entire book, but you really do get a nice cherry pick of some of the BBC's most iconic programmes, from some golden oldies to modern day hits. To focus on a few favourites, why not start with the obvious, Doctor Who. The 2-page spread, aside from giving us a lovely image of a Dalek, details the show's origins and progression in a very tidy way. It's one of this book's strong points, to be honest, giving you the history of a topic in a very accessible, quick, and uncomplicated manner. However, I hate being that fan, but there is 1 or 2 inconsistencies here. One being that it claims Jodie Whittaker was cast as the first female Doctor in 2018, which technically isn't correct. Her first series was in 2018 for sure, but she was cast the year before, in 2017. A more egregious nitpick is the phrase, a constant among all Doctors, is that each is accompanied on their various adventures by a human companion. And yeah, most of the companions are human, but what about Leela? Or Canine? The 2 Romanas, anyone? Nissa? Turlo?
Hadrick.
I know they're little tedious fan-brain nitpicks, but considering this is meant to be delivering info in a concise and quick manner, accurate information is always appreciated. The puzzles for the Who section focus on some of the series' most well-known villains, plus a little can you put the Doctors in chronological order offering. Before checking out another programme, throughout the book you get these nice asides into other aspects of the BBC, such as the Radiophonic Workshop and BBC Film. Not only is it great that they get a mention, but it's great to see that they get the same treatment as every other programme here, regardless of popularity or longevity. Back to programmes, let's have a look at Casualty, which is located in the soap opera section. I've always viewed Casualty as more of a drama, but I know it shares many similarities with the soap opera format. By this point, the formula of the book is feeling familiar, but if that's what you're in it for, then that's alright. A nice little history lesson on the programme itself, plus some corresponding puzzles, such as a word search, and a fill in the blanks of the staff's various jobs within the ED. Did you know that Casualty is the longest running medical drama in the world? See that word there? Drama? Why is it in the soap opera section? On the very next page is one of the longest running dramas ever, in the world mind you, which is The Archers, which has been airing on the radio regularly since 1951. Whilst not for everyone, it's a fascinating show to learn the history and development of. In fact, The Archers was the subject of my third-year dissertation back when I was at drama school, so I have a lot to thank this everyday tale of country folk series for. Outside of entertainment-based programmes, I find the news, weather and current affairs section to be interesting indeed. The format and how they're presented in this book remains the same, but there's lots of interesting facts to be learned about topics such as election night, the shipping forecast, the World Service, and even royal events. And before you ask, no, there isn't any mention of the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. I've got a feeling this book had already been sent to the printers by the time that event occurred. The last little section I wanted to touch base on was the technology section, which closes out the book. You get a fascinating insight into the BBC's approach to the digital world, computing, and its focus on interactivity, with my old favourite CFAX getting a little mention. All in all, this book is 240 pages stacked to the brim of BBC history, and whilst there are puzzles on nearly every page, I keep forgetting that it's titled as a puzzle book. This is all down to personal preference, of course, but had this release been solely tailored to the history sections on programmes, BBC services and so on, then I would have adored that much more. The puzzles here are fun, well, most of them are at least, but I found myself flicking past a lot of them just to learn some more history. Plus, you are encouraged to write in this book, to solve the puzzles naturally, but I'd feel awful ruining such a quality book with my hideous handwriting. Except for ident identity, you know we've got to get that one filled in. Obviously, if you want to fill the puzzles in your own copy, be my guest, but maybe use pencil if you're unsure of the answers. And no cheating. However, I would still recommend this book overall. The comparison I want to draw here, though, is another release from this year that equally celebrates the Beeb's centenary. That release is The BBC, A People's History, written by Professor David Hendy. Available in hardback, paperback, and as an ebook, this chonky thing is a completely comprehensive look at the corporation's history, brimming with detail right from the early days of the 1920s up until the present day. If you want a very elaborate read that's several hundred pages long, then perhaps this is the release for you. I would argue, though, that the humble BBC puzzle book offers something unique of its own. It mirrors Hendy's book in that it lays out BBC history, but not only do the addition of puzzles make this a more interactive experience, but the factual information is presented in a more basic, yet accessible manner. If you're just after the key bits and big moments of the BBC's first 100 years, then this may be the preferred choice for you. Despite any misgivings I may have had with the BBC puzzle book, I found it a fun, enjoyable read. I learnt a few new facts about various BBC programmes, I was able to solve some intriguing puzzles along the way, and if nothing else, it just looks really nice on my shelf. You can pick up the BBC puzzle book from a variety of places, including all good bookshops, as well as various online retailers. Its recommended retail price is £14.99 here in the UK, $22 in the United States, and $24 in Canada. I know a book review is something new here on the channel, but I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on this celebratory release. If you did, be sure to leave a like on this video, and let me know in the comments if you decided to pick this colourful hardback up for yourself. I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Hux Media, Ben Freeman, Ethan Carberry-Holt, Bruce Danton, the Broken Kitsumanoid, Tobos Krotz, and Polsky Liz, our AMTV staff members.